The UGC's new equity norms have triggered protest and political ripples across the country. So what do these rules really say? Why is it that suddenly we've seen a push from the upper caste groups objecting? And why has this put the ruling government and the party BJP in a rather tight spot, or has it?
Once again in the spotlight. How caste fault line continued to be an influential force in India, shaping its cultural hierarchy, political dynamics and social unrest. Students and upper caste groups are protesting the University Grants Commission's new draft rules on discrimination, calling them biased and dangerous. The regulations seek to overhaul how Indian universities identify, investigate and penalize caste-based bias. The draft defines discrimination broadly, covering explicit acts, implicit bias, structural disadvantage, and harm to dignity. It mandates that every university set up equal opportunity centers and equity panels, complaints committees with powers to investigate and recommend action, equity squads to monitor vulnerable campus spaces, equity ambassadors in hostels and departments, and a 24-hour helpline that can directly connect complainants with the police. While the stated objective is greater inclusion and safety, the framework has triggered sharp resistance from upper caste groups. Protesters argue the rules tilt the system against them. They point to the absence of mandatory general category representation on decision-making panels, the lack of penalties for false or malicious complaints, vague terms such as implicit discrimination, and what they describe as a reversal of the burden of proof. The fear, they say, is of accusations without adequate procedural safeguards.
जो SC, ST, OBC ये वर्ग हैं, ये सब शोषित उसमें दिखाए गए हैं कि इनका शोषण हो रहा है। विद्या के मंदिर में विद्या के आधार पे छात्रों को बांटने का काम कर रहे हैं।
हमारी मांग है इस काले कानून को तुरंत वापस लिया जाए। हमारी मांग ये नहीं है कि इसमें संशोधन किया जाए, इसको वापस लिया जाए।
इससे पहले आपने SC, ST एक्ट लाया, इसका अपग्रेडेड वर्जन एक तरह से, मतलब छात्र अब डर के इस विश्वविद्यालय में पढ़ेगा।
सरकार को सुनना पड़ेगा। PIL लग चुकी है सुप्रीम कोर्ट में, हमारा काम चल रहा है और ये तोड़ने का जो नियम है ये गलत है, इसको वापस लेना ही पड़ेगा।
Amid the protest, Union Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan has sought to reassure critics.
एक बात तो बहुत विनम्रता से आश्वस्त करना चाहता हूँ, किसी को उत्पीड़न होने नहीं दिया जाए, कोई भेदभाव नहीं होगा। जो व्यवस्था हुई है भारत की, कुछ भी व्यवस्था हो संविधान की परिधि के अंदर होगा, और ये जो विषय आई है ये तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट की निगरानी में व्यवस्था है।
At the same time, official data suggests the problem the UGC seeks to address is real and growing. Reported cases of caste-based discrimination on campuses have jumped 118% between 2019 and 2024. Complaints rose from 173 to 378, with more than 1,160 cases reported nationwide over the last 5 years. The controversy has now reached the Supreme Court. The plea argues that the draft rules deny grievance redressal and institutional protection to persons belonging to non-SC, ST and OBC categories. Politically, the issue places the BJP in a clear catch-22. If the regulations are implemented in their current form, the party risks alienating upper caste groups that have traditionally backed it. If the rules are diluted or stalled, it risks further antagonizing Dalit and OBC voters, a bloc that showed signs of drifting away from the BJP in the 2024 Lok Sabha elections. Many within the party would quietly hope the courts take their time, deferring what could become a politically explosive decision. The issue is a political hot potato, with most political parties trying to stay away from the controversy, with a few speaking out.
The UGC, this particular vertical of caste against caste, this is the creation of this BJP government. They have been always pitching one caste against another caste, one religion against another religion. So this is an internal matter. Nevertheless, let all these issues be discussed.
As protests continue on the streets and the legal challenge unfolds in court, the larger question remains unresolved. Can the UGC's push for equity strike a balance between protection and fairness? Or will it deepen social fault lines and politically backfire? Bureau Report, India Today.
All right, the latest news break coming in on this. Till now, the Congress was silent on the new UGC regulations, but it does seem the Congress now throwing its weight behind the new regulations that have put the Bharatiya Janata Party in a rather political tight spot. Congress student body has welcomed the new UGC regulations. The NSUI calls new rules on equity an important step towards tackling discrimination. Amidst protests, Congress renews caste census demand. Caste census will resolve UGC issues. So the Congress somewhere down the line, at least the student body NSUI, tying in the caste census to the new UGC regulations.
हम लोगों ने लगातार कहा है कि कास्ट सेंसस होना चाहिए। कास्ट सेंसस में ये सारे इश्यूज रिजॉल्व हो जाएंगे। यूजीसी के ऊपर ही हम कह रहे हैं कि हम कास्ट सेंसस ने हम लोगों ने कास्ट सेंसस होना चाहिए अगर बोले कास्ट सेंसस होगा, कास्ट सेंसस में ये सारे इश्यूज टेकअप हो जाएंगे, उसमें इसका आंसर उसमें मिल जाएगा, रिजॉल्व हो जाएंगे।
All right, we're going to get into, what really the UGC regulations mean. Why is there opposition just about later? But let's break it down politically for our viewers. Why is it seen that the BJP and the government is in a bit of a catch-22 situation if it actually implements these regulations or even holds them back? And political history stands testimony to that, because the massive aversion to these regulations is coming in from the upper castes. The upper castes, at least in the recent past, have been the core vote bank, dyed in wool where the BJP is concerned. So if the BJP goes ahead with these regulations, they have a risk of alienating that vote bank of the BJP. But they're also damned if they don't, because you had the Dalits and the OBCs that have been voting for the BJP. 2024 election saw a part of that chunk move away, and if the BJP doesn't go ahead with it, does it risk alienating that very vote bank a little more? Let's cut across to Neerja Chowdhury, senior journalist, political commentator, and get in a quick comment on the political dynamics of it, Ms. Chowdhury, if you can, identify for us. Because if you go back in history, at least in the recent political history, the upper caste has been voting for the BJP. The kind of protest that we see today against the UGC regulation coming from these subsets of caste. So the BJP in a bit of a catch-22.
I find this very difficult to understand that the UGC comes under the Ministry of Education of the Government of India, and government is run by the BJP. Has the BJP gone ahead with this so unthinkingly, not mindful of the implications or the fallout that it could have? Normally, BJP is not given to doing things like that rashly. I'm reminded, Preeti, of Mandal in 1990, when the Vishwanath Pratap Singh government had given 27% reservation for the OBCs in government jobs. And it opened the Pandora's box, which led to the fall of the government. And it was opposed by the upper castes all over campuses, and many, a couple of hundred younger people immolated themselves belonging to the upper caste. And the BJP was forced to backtrack and withdrew its support to the VP government. Now, this too looks like a hot potato, going by the kind of reaction that's coming. And obviously, it's coming from the upper caste. Now, you're right, upper castes have supported the BJP, but there is the 90% out there. The OBCs, the Dalits, they make a huge chunk. And if the government today withdraws these rules, the new rules, which make it mandatory, it's no longer advisory, and equal opportunity committees are going to be set up on campuses and the institutions, and they are supposed to have OBCs on them, Dalits on them, women on them, disabled on them, and so on. Now, if you withdraw it, then there is going to be an almighty reaction from these communities also, not just from the upper caste. So this is a hot potato. Now, it is true that the upper castes have been disaffected, and the elevation of Nitin Nabeen, who's a caste belonging to the upper caste as the new party president, was one of the reasons was also to mollify the upper caste, to send the signal that it's not only identity politics revolving around OBCs and Dalits that the BJP is interested in. It has to balance. But this is really a hot potato on the campuses. How the BJP is going to deal with it, of course, it's gone to court. That is the best way to diffuse it. But to have upper caste versus OBCs come Dalits on your campuses is something to be avoided. Even though caste, it may be true that caste discrimination cases have increased, more action needs to be taken. All that is true. But is this the way to go? I don't know.
Well, interesting, Ms. Chowdhury, because also, I just want to put it out for our viewers that these regulations haven't really come in on the volition of the Education Ministry. It's come at the back of the top court of the country, who has been listening to a petition and a case by Rohit Vemula's mother, who wanted stringent laws to come in where protecting, the rights of, students who come in from the Dalit communities and other marginalized communities. And it was the court that had to force.
One other thing here.
Yes, go ahead, ma'am.
This OBCization of Indian politics towards which we are headed. And remember, OBCs in Bihar caste census were at 65%, almost 65%. If it consolidates OBCs and Dalits behind the BJP, then it takes away from the Congress its big plank of caste census that Rahul Gandhi has been flagging. But, it inherent in this, implicit in it is the threat of violence, things spinning out of control. And it has to be handled very, very carefully, even as they have to provide justice to these communities who have, over the decades, been on the peripheries. There's no doubt about that.
Well, thank you, Ms. Chowdhury, for joining us and at least, giving us the political implication of this, and which is rooted in history, which goes all the way back to Mandal, is what Ms. Neerja Chowdhury is also telling us. Thank you there. But I also want to bring in, because what's interesting, viewers, is in midst of all of this, a lot of resentment, a lot of pushback, a lot of protest. While you see it in universities, which is stemming in from students coming in from the upper caste, but a lot of that, which you see on social media as well and outside, comes in from those who have been dyed in the wool, supporters of the Bharatiya Janata Party. And you can actually see that kind of pushback and protest from them. One of those, is joining me this evening, Mohandas Pai, Chairman, Aarin Capital, someone who's usually stood behind and agreed with the government policies, today is standing firmly against the new UGC norms. So my first question, what makes you protest against the new UGC norms? Why do you see that, why do you think that we are seeing the kind of mass protest that we are, the likes of you, who usually have agreed with the government, joining in?
The new UGC regulation is draconian, anti-constitution, anti-India, and must be repealed. To say that only one set of Indians are oppressors, others are not, is ridiculous. There is no data to back this assertion. There is no data at all to say that, one set of people are oppressing the others. This goes back to the UPS, communal bill, which tried to fix Hindus to say they are the oppressors against Muslims, which is ridiculous. This is anti-constitutional and should be sacked, and there is no protection against false cases. Today we saw an RJD spokesperson saying that they're going to file false cases against general category. We saw one video on X which says that a person of a reserved category proposed to a girl of a general category when she refused. He went and filed an SC/ST case. This is ridiculous. This is going to happen. And today we saw data on X which says that when you look at suicides, student suicide in IIT over the last 3 to 5 years come across all communities. It's not only reserved community. General category people also commit suicide. Is a problem across. And lastly, the total number of any caste complaints for discrimination is around 400 or 350 or so, when 4.3 crore young people are in college. Is it such a great pandemic that you have to bring some draconian regulations and give powers to some leftist NGOs and activists. I mean, this is ridiculous. This anti-constitution must be repealed, or otherwise, government must say all students need to be protected from caste discrimination, irrespective of background. That's the right thing to do.
So many would suggest that these arguments smack of an upper caste mindset because you speak of data and there is data, which seems to prove that there are certain subsets of caste that have been subjugated, especially in the Indian education system, and it is only at the back of that subjugation that the need of of regulations which are mandatory like this have been formulated. It's come from the top court of the country.
Now, where is the data? I want all these fellows, activists, to show us data. If you look at the All India Survey of Higher Education, SCs make up 16.8% of population. There are 16% of students in college. ST is 8%, they make up 7%. OBC is 40%, they make up 36%. And this is about 3-year-old data. Today we'll find that most communities have students in college almost equal to the proportion in college. So what are these people talking about? Where is the data to say there's one set of people subjugating others? There is no data to say that. Ask them to give the data. Where is the data? Supreme Court should look at data and not carried away by activists who are trying to create a fake narrative as if there's a great amount of oppression going on in this country.
So, let me give you an example. The sheer fact that today we have these regulations by the UGC come not from the fact that the Education Ministry decided to formulate this of their own volition. It came at the back of the likes of Rohit Vemula's mother, Radhika Vemula, who went to court after the demise of her son, asking for stringent norms to be in place that protect the rights of communities which are marginalized, where her son, as per her, got harassed.
See, the Rohit Vemula case should be seen in the context of the report given by the Telangana government. What did the Telangana government say? That Rohit Vemula's caste was not what he said he was, right? And Rohit Vemula has given a letter, nobody is responsible for his death. When he himself was given the letter, nobody is responsible for his death. The letter is on record. How can anybody say this caste oppression has something to do with caste? Where is the data? And you will see the investigation. The investigation has been closed. The investigation report can be placed before the Supreme Court. Why are people running a fake narrative?
Mr. Pai, are you actually telling me that, that there is no harassment, that students that come from marginalized communities and castes face zero harassment and it's a level playing field where education is concerned?
I think there is equality for all students in all educational institutions. Please tell me. I'm not seen any data to say there's inequality. 50% of the seats in government colleges and institutions are reserved. Of the balance 50%, 10% are for EWS for the non-reserved category. They're all reserved. They're all being filled up all across India in public institutions. Where is there any discrimination? And if you look at the total number of students in all colleges across the country, private and public, the number of students from the reserved category is almost equal to the population. So where is the discrimination against anybody? If the government and the Supreme Court are bothered about any caste discrimination, let them say that all students will be protected against caste discrimination. And if you are discriminated on accounts of your caste, irrespective of what your caste is, you can file a case. You get protection. Let everybody get protected. Why single out 15-20% of population to point them out and say you are oppressors, others are oppressed? Where is the data? There is no data today to justify such things, except some, fake narratives created by vested interests for their own reasons. Today, we have about 22.5% reservation in the legislature. And, please remember, in the Constituent Assembly and in the Parliament for many, many years, the reservation came about because the recommendation of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar and everybody deciding, yes, some of our people have been left behind, we must give them reservation to come up. And Babasaheb had said it's for 10 years, it's being extended every 10 years. And there's a national consensus that we must do this. And who are the people who are in power for the last 30 years? So-called upper caste. They're the ones who said we must have reservations. They're the ones who had majority in the Constituent Assembly and the first few parliaments who agreed. So everybody says, yes, we must help our Britain. We must make a cashless society. Are you making this a cashless society? You're not. You're only creating more discrimination, breaking up people. If you are bothered about caste discrimination, give the same benefit to everybody. Are you saying people are upper caste and not discriminated, not targeted? The evidence does not show that. You can see today, you saw that RJD spokesperson abuse and say we are going to fight upper caste because we got this law. I mean, it should not be done. This goes against Article 14. And please remember, reservation are an exception to Article 14. Article 14 promises equality, and everybody is equal in this country. Yes, we have all of us accepted reservation for many years because all of us feel a part of a community should be, advanced, and people are agreeing. That doesn't mean that one set of people are oppressors. We have enough laws as it is to go against people who are so-called oppressing. Do that. Recently, the Supreme Court also gave a decision against the draconian sections of the SC/ST Act to say how it has been misused.
Mr. Pai, you want proof as in data of oppression, but how do you quantify oppression? It's happened in the case, on multiple cases. How do you quantify where data is concerned? And, moving on from there, my final question, Mr. Pai. The fact is, other than the merits of the UGC norms and with what you seem to suggest, the critiques of it, there is also a political issue. This has blown up politically for the incumbent government. It's pretty much in a catch-22 situation because if it goes ahead, somewhere down the line, it antagonizes the upper caste who at one point of time voted for it and continue to do so. And on the other hand, if it doesn't, then it irks and risks antagonizing the Dalits and other marginalized communities like the OBCs.
No, look, the solution is very simple. The Supreme Court is seized of the matter of caste discrimination. Just have the regulations to say all students will have equal protection against caste discrimination. Now you can say, I belong to the reserved category, somebody of this caste is oppressing me, that will be an investigation. Now somebody of the so-called upper caste can say, I belong to this section, this person is oppressing me, let it be investigated. Let it be investigated. Let the investigation decide. Let there be justice to everybody. Why do they denying justice to a small section of population and saying they're born oppressors, they're the oppressors? How can you make the statement? You can't make such statement. Give the same benefit of protection to all students. Then you solve the problem.
All right, Mr. Pai, thank you for taking the time out and joining us. We've taken your point of view. Now let me try and get a contrarian point of view. Joining me is Mr. Yogendra Yadav. He has been a former UGC member. Thank you, Mr. Yadav, for taking the time out. My first question, what do you make of the new UGC guidelines, sir, which are mandatory?
There used to be a theory of manufactured consent, which is how regimes manufacture agreements. But this instance is an instance of manufactured dissent. How a regime is trying to cultivate dissent against its own decision so that it can be diluted. This is very interesting because in the entire debate, all the basic facts are being ignored. The impression is that somehow this government and the UGC has, for the first time, come out with something draconian, something that deals with the caste question, which is anti-discriminatory. All this is complete lie. The simple fact is anti-discrimination is part of our constitution. And in order to fulfill it, in 2012, since 2012, UGC has had a regulation. There is nothing new about it. Number two, the previous regulations talked about caste. The recent one talks about caste. Nothing new about it. Number three, this regulation is not just for caste. It is for gender. It is for physical disability. It is for all forms of disadvantages and discrimination. And number four, this regime is doing nothing on its own. It would be strange if this regime were to suddenly become so conscious on social justice. The simple fact is there is a court case, a case in the Supreme Court, which has been going on since 2019, which has forced and directed the government to make changes in the previous regulation, which is being implemented. But the trouble is that because the UGC and this government doesn't want to do what the Supreme Court is forcing it to do, therefore they are manufacturing a dissent, manufacturing an outrage, so that they can say, oh my God, there is backlash, we have to reconsider it. That is the political game that we are looking at.
Mr. Yadav, these charges are rather grave because what you seem to insinuate is that the government is manufacturing dissent through protest, through certain communities, and pushing them to protest to do away with the regulations that you seem to suggest that the government was forced to bring in at the behest of the top court.
Preeti, I'm not insinuating. May I request you and your correspondents to please check the social profile of each of the persons who is opposing it. Find out what their views about this regime, Mr. Modi, RSS, and BJP are, and then you would not say insinuating. This is a simple fact. The simple fact is that all those who are opposing this regulation and creating this backlash are actually pro-regime. And isn't that very surprising? And the second thing is, let's simply check the simple facts of the case, which is what I'm trying to present to you. To my mind, the discussion should not be about how draconian this particular regulations are. The real question that we should be discussing is how it has been diluted. The 2012 regulations have been strengthened in one respect because of the directions of the Supreme Court. The institutional mechanism for dealing with anti-discrimination has indeed been strengthened, and it should be welcomed. Earlier, there was no appeal outside the institution. Now there is an appeal outside the institution. Earlier, the timelines were loose. Now the timelines are strong. Earlier, the UGC was not doing an oversight. Now the UGC is doing oversight. All these are changes dictated by the Supreme Court, which should be welcomed. However, the core definition of what is discrimination, the earlier regulations were very concrete about it, about the kind of discrimination, the kind of harassment that could take place in an educational context. Unfortunately, all that has been removed from the new regulations. That is what we should be discussing. A regime which is not known to be pro-social justice, which drags its feet, was forced to do something, did it half-heartedly, and is now engineering a protest so that it doesn't have to do even that half-hearted measures. That is the true story.
Let's talk about the new regulations that you want to speak of, Mr. Yadav. The general perception coming in from the protesters is that one is trying to address discrimination by bringing in more discrimination by the virtue of these new norms.
Preeti, you would have known all these things. The moment you have a law about dowry, what is the protest? Oh my God, it is against men. The moment you have a law addressing racial discrimination in the US, what is the general impression? Oh my God, white people are being discriminated against. This always happens when you have any law that deals with social justice. The powerful always protest by saying that they are victims. Is there something surprising about it? As a matter of fact, if you look at those regulations, these regulations are nowhere the kind of very strong acts, for example, the Anti-Rape Act or the Anti-Dowry Act, which are very, very strong and leave the accused with very few options. There is nothing of that kind in the regulations. There are three kinds of appeal, and the onus of proving the guilt is not shifted onto the accused. So these are very normal regulations. And if our country is not to simply implement the anti-discriminatory intent and fundamental right of the Constitution, what else are we supposed to do?
All right, Mr. Yadav, thank you for joining us. We're going to keep a keen eye on all developments on this. The protests continue to rage on while you've had the Education Minister, Mr. Dharmendra Pradhan, come out and say that everything will be looked at very closely. The law, or the regulations rather, will not be misused. Let's get you the latest on the mother of all deals that have been signed between India and EU. The world witnessed the strong bond between India and the EU. Warm handshakes, hugs showcase strong friendships alongside diplomacy. But the meat of the matter is on what was signed and what we as consumers in India need to look forward to. Well, in terms of optics, Prime Minister Modi praised European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen after the historic EU deal. He said this new pact will steer the global order. On the other hand, you had the same kind of bonhomie reciprocated by the EU leaders. Listen in and we'll get you the latest coming in on what gets cheaper, what's coming, what we can look forward to.
2 weeks ago, India marked Makar Sankranti. It's the beginning of Uttarayan, the sun's northward journey. From darkness to light, from stillness to growth, from what was to what can be. And that is what makes our summit so unique and timely. The time is right for renewal, for fresh momentum, and for opening a new chapter in EU-India friendship. And this is exactly what we have achieved together today.
अपने दो करीबी मित्रों प्रेसिडेंट कोस्टा और प्रेसिडेंट फॉन डर लायन का इस अभूतपूर्व भारत यात्रा में स्वागत करते हुए मुझे बहुत खुशी हो रही है। कोस्टा जी अपनी सरल जीवन शैली और समाज के प्रति प्रेम के आधार पर लिस्बन के गांधी के नाम से जाने जाते हैं और उर्सुला जी जर्मनी की पहली महिला रक्षा मंत्री नहीं, यूरोपियन यूनियन कमीशन की भी पहली महिला प्रेसिडेंट बनकर पूरी दुनिया के लिए एक प्रेरणा है।
All right, so what's in it for the likes of us? Consumer benefits, of course, the global optics of it all. Let's break it down. Joining me in the studio, Siddharth Zarabi, our group editor, Business Today, freshly back from Davos. Welcome, Siddharth. We have Rajiv Dogra, former diplomat, Jayant Krishna, former CEO, ED, and COO, NSDC, Prime Minister Skill India Mission. Welcome, all three of you. Thank you for joining us. And Siddharth, let's begin with you. If you break it down in terms of the brass tacks of it, what gets cheaper for the consumer? What can we look forward to? What's the give and take?
Well, there are significant possibilities there, and remember that this will take several more months to come into effect. Effectively, 2027, about the same time, is when we can see the true benefits and fruits of this new deal translate into actionable, like you put it, price reductions, and as I would like to say, greater availability, more choice for Indian consumers, especially at the top end. Automobiles has been one area under focus. There are multiple other items. In fact, the trade basket is very, very significant. And Preeti, what really is being done is that every economy has a certain set of goods and services that it can export. It is good at that. That's what we are getting access to the European market, and likewise the Europeans are getting access to the very large, in fact one of the single largest consumer markets in India, which has now been integrated into one tax framework for their goods and services. I just want to leave you with one ramification which will explain to you how significant this deal is, and I believe that this is the single most important trade deal and associated agreements that India has ever signed since 1991. I believe it is as epochal as that moment in our economic history. Bangladesh, for years, being a LDC, a lowest developed country, has enjoyed far greater exports access for its textiles products to the European Union because they got special and preferential treatment on account of their economic status, not just because their products were much better than theirs. Right. Today, Indian textile makers are now at par. That disadvantage has been removed. So the potential consequential impact in economic terms will take many months to even understand, and there is, of course, a process that will be underway, but clearly one of the biggest deals ever in our economic history.
Well, I'm glad. I'm really looking forward to the cheaper cars, the cheaper blueberries, the cheaper cheese. Well, also there's a wine list there, which will be a lot more than what you see on the Indian market and a lot more cheaper. So lots to look forward to. But in terms of, diplomacy, in terms of optics, Rajiv Dogra, the optics that went out of the Hyderabad House, New Delhi today, especially which were beamed in the United States of America, would not have been taken so well. Good for us, but not so good for a select few.
Well, not so good for China also, because you remember when Ursula went to China a couple of months back, she was given a bus. When she came down from her aircraft, she was given a bus to travel in. And her welcome in China was minimal. Compared to that, look at the buggy ride. Look at the way there was a Minister of State to accompany her to all the meetings and all the appointments. So she and actually Mr. Costa were made much of, and that is perhaps one reason why this deal, which did not seem possible at one moment before their arrival, materialized. Now, as you said very rightly, there are messages being conveyed, and the principal message is to the one who's occupying the White House. I don't know whether he's given something on Twitter or one of his own Truth Social.
Not yet.
Not yet, but sometime around the midnight American time, he'll get up from the bed and say that I have to respond to these people. Now, whatever it is, in one way, the glass is half full already because of the atmospherics of the agreement. The other thing is that we have a lot to look forward to in terms of targets, because EU, US, EU, China trade is about $800 billion. EU, ASEAN trade is $300 billion. Ours is just about $130 billion, part of it because of our oil exports to EU. But the reality is more sobering. So we have targets which should be possible, maybe not in astronomical terms of 300 and 800 billion dollars, but much more than the modest trade that we have with 27 countries of EU. The other thing is that between the EU and India, we represent roughly around 25% of the global population and 22% of the global GDP. So it is not as if it's a small agreement. The last point I want to emphasize here is that after free trade agreement with Australia and UAE, you now have a major agreement with a large group of substantial countries in the world. And that is the big step forward.
The big step forward, takeaway. Well, the deal in itself, Jayant Krishna, how do you look at it? I'll give you the last word.
So I think it's very, everybody has called it the mother of all deals. It gives market access to for 27 European countries, which are a part of EU and India put together. It's almost market access for 2 billion people, right? And let's not forget, that 25% of global GDP and 1/3 of global trade is what the total transaction value of trade between India and European Union is. 17% of all Indian exports are done to the European Union, and almost 9 to 10% of overall European Union exports are to India. So I think it's very, very important. And let's also understand that European Union, like the US, is one group of countries where India has a trade surplus in its favor. So I see it as very, very important because, while India and European Union have been strategic partners from 2004 onwards, but not much has happened on the ground, to convert that into concrete action. And to that extent, although it kicks off only later this year or perhaps early next year, after a lot of formalities have to happen. But, the contours have been agreed. So I think, but one thing which people confuse that I don't think for common man, I don't think the prices are going to fall. Because the kind of European cars which are imported in India right now or which are manufactured here, there's a very, very niche segment which buys that. and even the wines and spirits and so on and so forth, which have had 150% duty. I think it will come down, but again, it caters to a certain segment of the market. So I think, but I think there are a lot of the overall investment ties between European Union and India will deepen. The supply chains will get deepened, and lots of sectors like manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, clean energy, technology services, textiles, gems and jewelry, leather, electrical machines. I think they are all these product categories where a lot of change is bound to happen. So I'm very, very hopeful that it will be good. And as the other colleague in the panel said, that the message to be it remains to be seen that how US and the President Trump would see this development.
Right. Well, we'll know soon. Like Ambassador Dogra said, maybe a couple of hours. Thank you, all three gentlemen, for joining us. We're going to leave it at that. But we do leave you with India Today speaking exclusively to European Commission Vice President Kaja Kallas. She welcomed the agreement and said that trade between India and Europe is beneficial for both sides. We leave you with this conversation. Thank you. When will the tariffs or the trade deal be implemented?
Well, of course, it takes a bit of time because we are both democracies, and in democracies, there are procedures also that these deals need to go through. But we still hope that it goes fast because it's beneficial for both parties.
Okay, but a lot of them are talking about the timing. After a lot of strain in ties between India and the European Union, we're now seeing a big breakthrough. Is the weaponization of tariffs by Trump the reason why we saw a faster pace with which the deal has been concluded?
Well, the geopolitical landscape definitely helps with this. It is clear that we have had our, big partners before, but now the landscape is such that we need to build partnerships with those countries, those partners who believe in free trade, and definitely diversifying our trade portfolio on your side as well as our side is our mutual interest.
Interestingly, the president herself announced it at Davos, and there was a sharp reaction from the United States of America. Scott Bessent, Treasury Secretary, has already said that Europe is funding indirectly the Russia-Ukraine war. Your comments?
Well, of course, countries like America don't like if we are also diversifying our trade portfolios. That's very clear. But again, we are focusing on the positive side. What more can we do in terms of trade in different areas? Of course, it's in our interest that this war in Ukraine stops, and therefore we have put sanctions on Russian shadow fleet, on different types, so that this war will end. And this doesn't change. I mean, we also had these discussions with the Indian counterparts because it's in our mutual interest that this war will stop.